than, so many percent of it.
Good evening, and welcome to the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, September 25th at 2018. I'm going to read through the agenda. At 7 o'clock, we will have community input, and part of that will be an Eagle Scout project presentation by Douglas Stevenson. At 7:05, a one-day beer and wine application for the First Religious Society. At 7:10, we'll discuss an update on the fire chief search process to finalize the job description. At 7:20, discussion of and potentially vote upon the TSAC recommended speed limit. 7:45, Board of Selectmen votes to support or not support the STM articles. 8 o'clock, the CETF update on municipal solar project. At 8:10, update on the Master Planning Steering Committee. At 8:25, discussion of the process to fill the Housing Authority vacancies. At 8:45, Town Administrator's Report. 8:55, the Liaison Reports. At 9:10, approval of minutes. And at 9:15, adjournment. I don't think we'll be taking many of these out of order because we have a pretty compact schedule, but we may go overtime on some of these. But we're going to make sure that we allocate the right amount of time for each item, even if it means we go long. So with that, we will start with community input. Yes, please. If you could please stand up here and state your name and address. Speak into the microphone. It doesn't amplify your voice, but this is televised, and so it allows them to hear.
Okay, I'm happy to. I want to first thank you for the opportunity to input what is of a great concern to me. And what I have here is two packages, one for Administrator Stoddard and one for the Board of Selectmen. I would like to give this to Mr. Stoddard and the Board of Selectmen. And I would like it entered into the record. And what it contains is, very simply, a letter requesting that the deer hunt be stopped immediately. The Board of Selectmen have the power to do that. And I have submitted reasons in this particular pamphlet, including a letter to the mosquito, which outlines the fact that when I had started going to the, my name is Jeannie Janetsko from Maple Street. When I had started going to the Deer Committee meetings May 2nd, that was the last meeting that was publicly announced in the mosquito. I understand that legally it's not required, but it was the policy of the Deer Committee to do that, and it put a great number of people at a disadvantage not to do that any longer. I have a letter to the City in the Woods today, basically talking about the new signage at the Greeno, and that signage basically illustrates the fact that the deer hunt administration was not well thought out. And there are amazing things that are associated with that, including a dictate that the that people who use those town lands stay on marked trails, which basically saying it is not an attention item, it is a warning item. And so I think people's lives are in danger, as well as their children, which are people, and their animals as well. And I think it sets up a very large liability for the town of Carlisle. There are a large number of acres, 270 plus acres that is being denied to the town land, to the people of Carlisle on town land. And that is basically being leased to the equivalent to 1800s at a total benefit to Carlisle of $660. And I think that cost does not make any sense whatsoever in terms of a return on investment and the liability that is going to be assumed by the town. I typed up a nice version of it because I couldn't get it to print off the City in the Woods website without putting a lot of advertisements in it. There is a copy or a picture of the attention trail users sign that is on Greeno that does not have a Carlisle seal. There is also the typed up description of what is on the verbiage, and also it shows the tremendous amount of land that is being denied to citizens of Carlisle to use for almost 2 months. And then it also has, I've attached a hunting map that Lisa Dupree in City in the Woods has provided, and basically she has her own concerns. I know there is concerns on town land as well. I've spoken to other people, and they have come to me, and I have received phone calls about people contacting me. Some have left their names, and some have not. Some have talked to me in detail. So I am not the only one in Carlisle who is concerned about this. I know the rules and regulations allow you to stop the hunt at any point, and I think this is one of those things that is better stopped and aborted now rather than to proceed. So I would like to thank the Mr. Stoddard and the Carlisle Board of Selectmen for allowing me to input this, which is not going to be my last input about this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Just so everybody's aware, I say this every day, every meeting. Community input is where we receive input, but we don't comment back because they're typically topics that are not posted in our agenda. So thank you very much. Is there any other community input? Yes.
Yes. Greetings, you guys. Thank you for having me.
If you could just
My
state
name-
your oh,
Yes, my
all
name
right.
is George Vendura, and I'm a Carlisle resident for 17 years. And coincidentally, I have some issues also with the hunting. It's not only just the hunting. I'm not deer lover or deer hater. I'm not a hunter lover. I'm not a hunter hater. I am concerned about the town's liability. I live by Greeno, right alongside of Greeno. And as you enter the Greeno facility or the parking lot, there's a big sign that says no hunting. That lulls people into thinking there's no hunting. They have children, they have dogs. The dogs are sometimes off the leash. The children are always off the leash. And they are now lulled into the feeling that there is no hunting and it's safe. If you walk and walk and walk, which means it's not exactly close by, you walk maybe 50 yards, there's a little sign on a tree, and it's the fine print. Nobody's going to read any fine print. It's just a little tiny sign with a map on it with red areas. You go into a park, you read it, no alcohol, don't do drinking, stuff like that. It's simple. You don't go looking for fine print. Nobody does. That's why when we all get fired or something like that, you go home and you look for the fine print finally that's on your contract. So these little signs here say you should stay on the trail, and if you go over here, it's dangerous. Now, the taxpayers here pay $25 million in real estate taxes so they can use the so-called park. They don't know they're supposed to be restrained to the 3-foot trail. The park is 117 acres. I myself, as a scientist, use the park all the time to look for frogs and tadpoles because I keep track of those things because I am a scientist. And there are children that go off the path. They put flowers and butterflies, and there's birdhouses and hornets' nests. In fact, I actually promote such things by taking children along those paths and doing those things. If I didn't know that there was fine print, I would assume that there's no problem whatsoever. But there is a problem. And I think that the least you can do is put a big sign up and saying hunting as opposed to no hunting, so people are forewarned. Otherwise, you're going to get sued. And I'm going to get sued because I'm a taxpayer here. I don't want part of my $25 million going into $2-3 million for somebody getting hurt, just so that we can get a return of $600. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here for community input? Okay, yes.
My name is Ed Hall. I've lived in Carlisle for over 30 years. We abut the town forest, and we're very concerned about, we've completely posted our land against hunting, and we're concerned about anything that happens in the town forest. We took a walk over there to see what signs have been put up, and I will pass these, I'd like them back, but I'll pass these signs this,
I'm sorry, if you pass them out, they're public record and we won't be able to give them back to you.
well, if I hold them, can you see them?
They'd be public record. I mean, we could scan them maybe and send them back to you, but we would need to keep a copy of them so that we could at least replicate them. Just because if anybody were to take a look at the minutes and want to see what was discussed, we just need to be able to provide what they
Okay, well,
discussed.
I'd like them back. This first one is a sign that's on the tree that people have been looking at for years and years and years. When they walk their dogs in there, and when they come, the first thing the dogs want to do is run. So that means they're out of the car, the dogs are in the yard.
Can't do that anymore.
This is this sign is the one they put up for to announce that there's hunting by the archers. And I put my hand there to see how small that sign is. And here was the combination on the same tree as you go in. At least they're on the same tree, not like the other one where they're about 100 yards down and there's that little sign. It's a pretty doggone little sign. Some people say, well, if you're older, you probably have to get a magnifying glass to read it. But I think the liability to the town is something that I don't like to think about. And I think the Board of Selectmen are responsible for allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, would you give Jen your name and address, make sure that she's got it so she can get these back to you?
Okay. You have a pencil there? Ed Hum, P.O. Box 152, Carlisle.
Okay, anybody else here for public input before we get to Douglas? All right, Douglas.
We got a real peanut gallery here tonight.
Hello, Board. I'm Douglas Stevenson, 271 Cross Street, heart of Carlisle's Boy Scout Troop 135. I'm working towards the rank of Eagle. As a project, I'm cleaning, painting, and building shelves in one of the rooms in the basement of the Highland building. The storage will be used for Council on Aging's durable equipment. The storage they have now at the DPW is too small and does not fit the requirements they need. I have the support of the Council on Aging and Town Administrator Tim Goddard. The CEO, the Council on Aging, has provided all funding, and the labor will be done through volunteers of my Scout Troop friends, family, and other COA volunteers. I hope I have the board's full support. Do you have any questions?
I was just wondering if you spoke to the building inspector,
Yeah. One of the,
and he supports this.
him and David have
And-
been through the building and
okay.
have seen what room we are.
Yeah, so
planning on
the
using.
fire chief is
Yes.
supportive as well.
Hmm?
And how much storage space are you going to be building? You know.
So planning on building probably a 2x14 foot 2 shelves on one of the walls and then a workbench on the other side. And then, but most of it's for wheelchairs since those take up the most space. They need a bigger space to store all the wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm. And what would the workbench be used for?
Cleaning and making sure that all equipment is in proper use.
So maintenance of
Yeah.
what's being stored.
Yes.
Good idea. Great. Anybody, Carrie, do you have any questions?
I think it's a great project.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I think it's community input, but
Same for,
Right, the board normally doesn't take action under community input.
Right.
But if the board did want to take a vote of support, we could put it on the next agenda. Actually, we're going to post a meeting before town meeting, so we could have a brief item that night.
okay, so let's put it on the next agenda, but it seems like the general sense is that we're
Consensus
supportive
seems
of
to
it.
be, Yeah,
We
support.
just want to take the official action.
Before that official vote up this weekend, can I start working, cleaning, and painting the room?
Yeah, I think that there's a general sense that, yeah,
Thank you.
right, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, David Klein, Council on Aging Director. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Douglas Stevenson, the entire troop, and Clyde Kessel, who's our volunteer who actually manages our durable medical equipment program. It's a benefit to all Carlisle residents, and I think it's a good idea. So thank you.
Great. And so I assume that you'll be given a key to Highland.
I don't know. I have to ask Angela. She seems to be in charge of everything. But yeah.
Okay. Is there any other public input or any other comment on this project?
I guess I should make a comment on the project.
Okay.
Richard Sibley, 376 Cross Street, one of the Scoutmasters for the troop. This project has been approved and validated by the Boy Scouts of America, the Council, the Boston Minuteman Council, and obviously we are in full support of anything that helps the Council on Aging and puts the Highland Building to use.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment, just a quick question. I did mostly a question. I'm Drew Kissinger, 41 Kirk Street. My question is, I've heard in the background that there's been some controversy over this and delays in approving it. And I asked that, I don't know if that's still true or not. It's all good? We're good? Great. That's it? Okay. I just wanted to advocate and make sure we could grease the skids and get this moving, because it's a huge amount of work, and these kids run out of time to do the project and submit their stuff, so I just wanted to advocate in that.
I haven't heard anything negative about it.
Awesome.
So, but that doesn't mean that there hasn't been anything said.
Okay, thank you.
I think maybe the only thing that stems from is that we wanted to take the proper steps, and Douglas contacted the fire chief, who actually is in charge of administration for the school. So it was just to make sure that the proper steps were followed.
Yeah, and that's why I
all.
asked about the fire chief and the building inspector. Those are the two people who.
Yeah, for example, just as an example, we were communicated with that if that were to be there, that there were certain times of the day that it would be better not to go to do the work. That's right, Clyde, wasn't it, like before?
Yeah, Dave Flannery squared that away with me. I know what the limitations are, and they're okay.
Yeah, just not to interfere with things that are going on in the school.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm not
The
sure if
work's being
there's
done in Highland. So.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Seems odd to have a schedule. Okay. Thank you all. Okay, so just wait 1 second for them to. So it's 7:05. We have a one-day beer and wine application. The application is from the First Religious Society, the Concord Youth Theater. It's a wine tasting fundraiser. We have the application here. It has been signed by Chief Fisher, and he doesn't see issues with it. And does anybody have any questions? Or actually, is anybody here from the First Religious Society on behalf of this application? Okay, so we'll open it up to discussion with the board.
You want a motion?
Just wait, if anybody have any questions first? No? Okay.
Seemed pretty straightforward.
Yep, all right.
Okay, I move the Board of Selectmen grant a one-day wine and malt beverages license pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 14, to the First Religious Society located at 27 School Street, Carlisle, Mass, for wine tasting fundraiser event to be held on October 20th, 2018, from 7 to 9 p.m., subject to the applicant providing a host liquor liability insurance certificate.
Second.
Okay, first and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Put it on your calendar, guys. Looks good.
Okay, update on the fire chief search process. This is to finalize the job description. Chief Fisher, please, and is anybody else here with you?
I think you're stuck with me tonight.
You're here solo.
Solo. Evening, John Fisher, Police Chief. Does everybody have a copy of the updated job description?
Yep.
Red line.
Questions, thoughts,
I
concerns?
hate to do this at this late stage, but
Go ahead.
I was looking through this, and
Yes.
two things that jumped out at me was one of the things that we
Yeah,
talked
I put
about
it-
last
I
time,
put it up today.
was on the third page, one, two, three,
EMD.
fourth section down, EMD. I'd like to strike that and just have it be a part of what, the committee.
Yeah, that paragraph's got to go. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're right.
Um,
I meant to have that taken out prior to you getting this.
And if anybody else has any other questions,
here's
I
one.
commented
I
within the
read it,
PDF,
but
so I just need
It's
to.
not my area. Leave you to it.
Give me 1 second here.
Everything on schedule?
Yeah, yes. I think that, you know, when we talked about it, I've talked to Tim about it and other committee members. I think we'll, obviously, we've looked at the postings out there. The buzz is going, and I think that we'll wait till a little bit longer, it's a little bit further down the tracks before we reach out to them and see how the applications are coming in. And that's the last I know of it. Do you know any more, Tim?
The same, yeah.
Yeah, so MRI hasn't called me or noted any issues.
My PDF section died and I lost it. Keep asking questions, guys.
So did I give this to you in a Word document that can be, I think I did, right? Word
Yes.
document?
I only
It's
saw
not-
PDF. Well, sorry, the committee I saw, but this packet, it was just a.
Yeah,
We have the Word file.
Word file, so we'll fix that prior to letting anybody take a look at it.
Right.
So just to refresh everybody, Chief Flannery's last day is December 31st.
That's correct.
And that's the schedule that's driving this. And
I mean, it's the schedule that's driving this, but importantly, I still think the committee feels strongly that we can do this properly in this amount of time. It's not ideal, and you know, barring any snafus, we should be fine. But yeah, so I think we can do it properly in this amount of time without looking for any kind of ways to extend the current system.
I'm not finding it.
Do you want to know where it is? Where that,
No, I was looking for my other.
oh, your other
my
issue?
other Comment. It was minor compared to the one that I have already said. So I'm gonna let it go. But I did want to just have a question that in looking through this, it seemed to me like many of these things are things that the fire chief may delegate to like a deputy chief or something like that. Is that right? Because some of them are a little bit more,
Yeah.
is this like must do this or can delegate?
I think that with this, the committee felt like we want to incorporate the best that Chief Flannery has provided for what he does and what he's responsible for ultimately. So I think the delegation piece, just from my seat, would be obvious. I think no one's going to be able to do all this stuff. And I think, you know, currently, obviously, there's other folks there that definitely do some of these things. I just know it off the top of my head. But yeah, so this is the combination of what Chief Flannery's provided us, plus language that we worked up, that the committee put together. So I realize it's comprehensive and long.
Okay.
the other point is that we are recruiting a full-time chief,
Yes.
but that has no implications about a full-time fire department.
Correct.
Totally disconnected and unrelated things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the charge of our committee is narrow and specific. And when we got the direction from the Board of Selectmen, hire a full-time fire chief, that's what we're focused on, not necessarily anything else. And I even think the meetings with the firefighters, that was really the way that that they see this, the current firefighters. That and I want to make sure we stay in our lane. So that's a important question.
So that was my only edit, was taking out the EMD.
Thank you for catching that.
Do we need to go to personnel?
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, when you, or do we hire this candidate contingent on?
No, I think
I mean,
we
how-
have
how do we-
time. We have
I think
time
you don't,
before the.
because this position will be, direct report to the Board of Selectmen. You'll have an employment agreement with the new fire chief, just as you have with Chief Fisher and myself. Those
Okay, and so
positions are
there's no-
exempt.
There's no town grade thing
from
here.
Yeah.
Personnel.
Okay, that's what,
Okay.
yeah.
committee.
So as a courtesy, could you
It's-
send this to them?
certainly, yeah.
Okay.
It's not required that they approve it, but as a courtesy,
Yeah.
we'll share it with them.
Right, and ask them for their feedback, and we have,
Oh,
I'm not
yeah,
expecting
this doesn't mean
any
you can't,
any
do
edits,
it.
but we have a little bit of time, but I think we should consider
Yeah.
this one the final.
Okay.
I mean, I read it, and as I said, it's not, it's not in my lane, so I have nothing to say. There was nothing that popped out and said, oh my God, they're really gonna put that in there.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve this as the,
I
You-
move that the
The-
Board of
the-
Selectmen approve the job description as submitted and revised.
Second?
okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. I don't think you need to go anywhere.
Is that the sinking, the magic sinking
No,
seat?
the top keys, you take them up there.
We decided
That's
to,
Deb's
we
seat.
decided to just keep hitting you, one right after the other. Actually allow you to go home.
That's because you keep agreeing to do stuff, John, that's the
Sitting
problem.
over here.
So we're here to continue the speed limit proposal forum. We can go about this any way you would like. We could do a brief sort of background for the folks who are here of how this came about. Chief can give the rationale, and then we can open it for more community input about, how folks feel about it.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is, I would definitely like to just give another brief outline, because there are people here who may not have been there.
Want me to-
And then we can,
No, you're picked up there.
then we can get input from, or thoughts, maybe initial thoughts from the board, and then open it up for additional public input. And then we'll discuss it again.
Okay.
So please, brief overview in history.
Yes, just briefly. In 2016, the state passed legislation that allowed local communities to set in special districts or town-wide a lower speed limit of 25 miles an hour. Prior to that, the state set those limits, and they set them at at the prevailing speed of cars, irrespective of whether that's a safe speed or not. Okay. So town meeting last year passed a warrant article designed to allow us to adopt that option so that we can do our speed limits appropriate to our conditions. And Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, which is comprised of the police chief, the fire chief, the DPW chief, our superintendent, and a member of the Pathway Committee, looked at the issues, looked at other towns, what they're doing, and formed a proposal to the Board of Selectmen that we, in fact, utilize the option we approved at town meeting. And so the recommendation was for the speed limit to be reduced in areas adjacent to the existing roadside pathways. And so what that would mean on Bedford Road would be from the center of town eastbound to Stern Street. On Lowell Street, it would be northbound to Morse Road. On Westford Street, eastbound to Rockland. On Concord Road, southbound to Bingham. And on East Street, northeast to Partridge Lane. It's not just that the pathways end there. The pathways were designed to end there for a reason. There are community serves, there's neighborhoods that collect at those points. It's the first meaningful intersection as you leave town that serves the community and its connection to the center.
Chief, do you want to talk about their speed and experience? Sure.
So, in brief, I brought the PowerPoint presentation with me that I showed to folks at the school, and I'm happy to break that out to talk about what speeds were noted where. The bottom line is speeding is prevalent in these areas. People are driving over the speed limit, and importantly, it matches up with what we think would be safer for folks in town. That's just a real quick overview of the PowerPoint presentation. I'm trying to think what else I had in there. Yeah, and there was one piece of homework. There was a really good question that came up from the audience, because I spoke to the police chiefs and other communities that have implemented this. And I got their input about how it went, and things were very favorable. I think that one of the towns that matches up pretty well with ours is Belmont. Now, they have a few more people, obviously, but it's a community very, very committed to pedestrian safety. And one of the things I did not ask their police chief was, did this result in a reduction in automobile collisions? And so I did reach out to him and talk to him about that. And he said, I think it will, but we don't have enough data yet to give you a definitive answer. They don't have enough to have it be statistically significant. So I'm not positive that that's resulted in fewer collisions, but that was a piece of homework that I got out of the meeting we had at the school. But other than that, I've not spoken to anyone, any of the chiefs, and I think I spoke to 4, that had a bad thing to say about how it's gone or that it's been poorly received by their citizens.
At the forum, folks expressed their views on the speed limit recommendation, and there was a bit of a conversation about sort of 2 approaches. One is to implement as proposed, and the other was to implement town-wide. We do not have that proposal in front, the latter in front of the Board of Selectmen. TSAC has not met and discussed it or developed a proposal for that. So we're really here to talk about what's proposed. It may be the first step to a follow-on step, but we'd like to really focus on the proposal that's on the table.
Anybody on the board like to add anything from their thoughts on?
Well, it's part of an overall view of the center, and there are things that can be done to design the pathways into the center and into the circle, and in particular, that help mitigate the speed problem as well. So I think this is one sort of tool we can use, and it's one of several tools that we can and intend to use for safety. Yeah.
We have 2 grant applications, one submitted and one pending, for state funding to improve the safety of pedestrians around existing pathways or existing areas, and a second grant for expanding the distance of the pathways so more of our community can be connected to our center and to each other. So it is part of a broader picture of focusing in on a complete streets view of how to make the roads safe for all users.
So I don't know if anybody else did, maybe some of you did, but I had several residents reach out to me both in writing and called me. And I don't know if this is appropriate to voice their concerns. I did include a PowerPoint presentation from folks on Rutland Street that expressed an interest in having speed limits lowered, recognizing the traffic issues. Rutland Cross, and we can add West and Brook to that. So those are all folks that called, both supporting what we have and then also trying to figure out what we might do later on in their neighborhoods. So I told them I would carry the message because none of them were able to be there, be able to be here tonight or at the last meeting.
Okay.
That was the only thing. Thank you.
And just, just to reiterate what you said, you know, we can and will have meetings about other things we can do, and we're certainly gonna have a lot of meetings about what we can do in the center of town to do it. Tonight is about kind of what was posted and the speed limit changes for the streets mentioned right now and for the distance mentioned right now.
Yep.
So at this point,
I have to say, a year ago when this first kind of surfaced, I think one or two people said to me, "Boy, are you kidding, you know, 25 mi-" And after that, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're gonna have people coming out of the woodwork. And I'm very interested to see the letters that came in and the notes. They were all in support. And when, of the people that came to our meeting last Monday, a majority of people were in support of this. So I am, color me surprised.
yeah, and I guess as, I think it was Chief Fisher said last time, if it turns out that we've done something a little bit too long or something like that, we can always undo it. This is not a one-way thing. You know, it can be something that we can play with, and make sure that the speed is an appropriate speed everywhere in town.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple I thought when I first saw it was that some of them appeared long. And one on East Street, for instance, right at the end of a long straight stretch where that's sight lines are not an issue. On the other hand, it does terminate in a crosswalk. And it's not that much longer. It's gonna add 14 milliseconds to somebody's commute. And it actually makes sense to have some rationale to why you terminate something where you do. And this is entirely consistent with that.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to make the decision in a vacuum without any input or anything, I would say I would shorten the one on Concord Road, and I would shorten the one on Bedford Road by just a little bit, but it's not, you know, it's, the pros have taken a look at this and so is anybody here, before any more, Board of Selectmen, anybody here would like to, say anything? Okay. So back to, no, back to us.
Back to us.
I'll let you talk, don't worry.
I thought you were gonna make a motion.
No, I was asking if.
Yeah.
See? Yeah, no, so just a couple of things that I took away from that, that forum as well is that, you know, the people that didn't quote-unquote support it, I don't think they were necessarily, not everybody was against it. One of the things that was brought up was enforcement. You know, and I think if you do reduce the speed limits, there definitely has to be enforcement. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand, and, you know, obviously the chief is well aware of that. And I mean, you guys enforce now, it's just one of the problems was that, you know, if the speed limit's 35 and somebody's going 40, that doesn't really stick in court. So, you know, if the speed limit's 25 and somebody's going 40, you know, that's a more enforceable, or what was the word that you used? It's actually
More egregious offense.
Egregious offense, right. So, you know, I mean, if people are going 5 over and the ticket gets, you know, negated or waived or whatever, you know, the court
Still a lot of time they have to spend on it.
Right.
Yes.
Right,
And
exactly.
there are, again, this is part of a number of things that can be done.
Yes.
Including pedestrian education.
Yeah.
To wear vests at night, and, you know, I was on Brook Street the other day, and there's a fellow walking on the wrong side of the road, meaning with traffic instead of against it, wearing headphones
Yeah.
halfway out in the middle of the street.
I think
you
I've
know.
seen that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how long he'll be around, but.
Yeah, right.
it's,
Yeah, I mean, I think there is enforcement.
Yeah,
so.
enforcement, and I think,
Right.
again, and this will raise awareness,
Mhm.
which I think is very important.
Will there be additional signs and letting motorists know in advance the speed limit change, that we will be doing this?
So part of this, and if you remember way back when we talked to Gary Davis about this, was doing the same thing we did when we changed the, for example, the stop sign on East. It's going to require some signage letting people know, number one. It's going to require the actual signs themselves to change the speed limits. And then it's going to require enforcement to be directed, but diplomatic, for lack of a better word, so that we can ensure that we're doing this fairly. The fairness and safety is the end game. And, but Mr. Davis provided an assurance that this could be done, the signage could be done, and I'm confident it can. You know, we've gone out and looked at it. I'm confident where the signs are, their conspicuity will be important, and providing people warning about the lower speeds, which, to Mr. Lewis's point, will help change the tone of that, so it gives people some education about it.
I don't think we're going to have a problem with the townspeople knowing I'm concerned about commuters. And I think I mentioned before, I've been in towns where when they've changed it, they put actually these orange flags on the new signs to, kind of saying, woo-hoo, here we are. So then there's no excuse for them to, ignore the sign. They can't say, gee, this is a new sign, I didn't see it, it really underscores.
Can't say that about a stop sign though, right?
No, but I mean, anything we can do to help, I think, speed up the process would be better. Slow down the process. I don't know which way. Okay.
No pun
Yeah.
Really got your attention.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, well, I'm grabbing the message boards for Halloween, so I want to maybe I'll do this after. Maybe we should do this, well, actually, you know what, Halloween's probably a better time even to get this going.
Do it before.
We're going to have the sign boards, I'm getting the sign boards the first week in October for Halloween, and when the center of town people can expect congestion, so maybe a good time to do both.
I would say if we could do it before Halloween.
Thinking out loud, you're right, this should get done before Halloween.
Yeah, so do you need
vote it in, we'll
something
do it.
from us in order to get going? I mean, to order the signs or whatever?
No, we have to vote.
Do we have to
vote.
Do we have to vote it?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Do you consider this to be a huge change or a tweak?
I gotta be honest, I think of it more as a tweak. If you look at the speeds, they're not, now they're gonna be, if they keep where they're going, they're gonna be 20 miles an hour plus over the speed limit. Where we were in the 5 to 10 range. So people would just be constantly found not responsible, which basically saying, not even not guilty, we're not even gonna look at this.
Yep.
So, I think it's a tweak. I think people are gonna need to drive significantly slower, but I still think it's a tweak. I don't think, especially people who live in Carlisle, this is gonna be that big a deal. And that could just be my impression from the people I've talked to, because I definitely tend to talk to people who are more interested in lowering the speed limits than raising them or keeping the current standard, but I think it's a tweak.
It might be a big enough change to change ways.
I do want to do want to point out just a couple of these things, a couple of these letters, and just mention why we're not discussing what is in the letters. There's one letter here that is mentioning a change to different than 30 mile per hour, and other locations even lower than 25 miles per hour, and that's not our purview. As I understand it, what this law allows us to do is set 25 miles an hour. It doesn't allow us to go in and start changing the speed limits elsewhere in town. Is that right?
Well, it's not wholly true, because, if we adopted the other piece of the statute where you go town-wide 25 and then revert back to other speeds at other places.
But those, if we reverted back, I guess, if we reverted back to other speeds at other places, are those speeds we can choose, or that it goes back to the state? Right. So, yeah. So we can't go in and choose, let's make this road 20 miles an hour, or let's make this road 30 miles an hour. We can do 25 townwide, or 25 here, 25 townwide, and then, but that's kind of unless posted elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay. And so that's why we're just, that's why I personally, that's why I wasn't addressing these other speed options here. We're talking about 25 miles per hour in the zones that have been proposed.
Okay, I move that we adopt the proposal, is it a letter? Do you guys have a letter?
It's right here, you could just say, right here.
Okay. Of the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee to adopt a 25 mile per hour speed zone in the following locations: Bedford Road eastbound to Stern Street, Lowell Street northbound to Morse Road, Westford Street eastbound to Rockland Road, Concord Road southbound to Bingham Road, and East Street from Bedford Road northeast to Partridge Lane.
Second?
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moved to abstain.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you so much.
Does this mean we won't see you anymore?
Yeah, right.
That's all right.
Okay,
We have sort of an update that pertains to Article 3. Would you like us to?
when we get to Article 3,
Sure.
Okay, we're gonna do,
which don't go very far,
I mean,
because we're getting to Article 3, we're getting to those now, but,
did we get any did we get a text from anybody?
I don't know how that meeting is going.
I did not.
Do we know somebody who's there, anybody that's,
I think someone's gonna be in touch with Nathan, is that right?
oh, were they gonna be in touch with you? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe if we take 3 out of order.
I'm not texting a friend, I'm texting to get an update on a particular issue. I guess I'm texting a friend, but it's for a particular issue.
Friend term loosely.
Okay, so let's go ahead. I think that we can potentially take these out of order, and let's jump down to the vote of support or no support for the roadway design funding. And I was wondering, Victor, if you would be
Walked outside.
able to come up and talk to us about the FinCom position?
Just had them leaving. They just left.
Then I'll be back.
I didn't send them away.
Oh, here's Melinda.
Get them back, yeah,
Yeah.
because we're gonna talk
You
talk
sent them
about
away.
3 before we talk about 1 and 2.
So don't go too.
Unless they're in the
They
restroom.
left, yeah.
That was too far. Okay. Okay.
Victor Liang, Chair of FinCom. So you'd like to talk about our discussions on 3?
On Article 3,
As opposed to
yes.
all.
Yeah, for now, because
Sure.
we're,
So we met, we've met actually the last three Mondays, and we've talked about these articles in kind of progressive understanding of having Deb and other folks kind of come in and inform us. And I think the first thing I'll say about Article 3 from FinCom perspective is that our position doesn't reflect upon the lack of merit of what is trying to be accomplished through Article 3. I think our position not to support Article 3 has more to do with how it falls into the process. And I'd like to also share with you why that's important. So in this, you know that we have a budget process each year where we actually take in all of the requests and we look at it across the town and we work a prioritization. And in that, we make a decision in terms of what to prioritize and what not to prioritize. And then we take that, obviously, for vote. So when you have these special town meetings and you kind of introduce these types of warrants or articles in the warrant that, in effect, actually increase that budget just after you've approved it, at least the way the warrant is written or the article is written, in a certain sense, you're actually doing an assessment of it without having the view across all of the different priorities. So as an example, one might look at this and say, well, yes, it has merit, let's go ahead and do it. But if you rewind it and if you were to have reviewed it 6 months ago on a priority that we didn't push forward, maybe that would have had a greater priority in the grand scheme of things. So I think that it's not that we're holding very rigidly to a process, say, well, we have to follow the process, but there's a reason. Because in order to make good fiscal decisions, you look at prioritization across what you have in front of you. That's actually a very similar comment that we have on Articles 1 and 2 as well, in that. In the discussion, we also looked at, well, what if we didn't have the special town meeting and you were to get this grant? How would we handle that? I think the way you'd handle that is that actually you wouldn't call a special town meeting, but you would actually begin to look into your operating budgets, seeing how you might be able to fund this. Yet, you know, that wasn't technically the process that we kind of went through. We had a special town meeting. We're going to try to bring it to the townspeople for kind of approval to increase that budget. So I think that kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of for Article 3 in the warrant, the kind of the basis of our discussions and the ultimate unanimous kind of decision not to support Article 3.
Okay, and it was unanimous?
Yes, it was unanimous.
May I speak? Yeah, go ahead, just a second.
Just 1 second.
I just wanted to add, it also fits in with our wish to have a hard deadline for warrant articles coming in at the end of our budget year and not have things coming in late, because it makes it much more difficult to handle. So it's of a piece.
So I have a question for you, and that is, we've put out for these grants, and what is the time frame of when we will hear back from the grants, and what is the time frame in which we would have to have this design work done to meet the requirements, then the timing requirements of the grants?
So we have a grant out for the expansion of the pathways, the bigger project, and we're expecting to hear back on October-ish 1, something in that. But with respect to Complete Streets, this application is due at the end of this week. The decision the state makes is, I'm told, is around January. And then the state enters into a grant contract, and when asked the specific question, how long do we have to complete the front end, which we fund, and all the construction, and the answer was typically a year, so to January 2020. In talking to Tech about the reasonableness of that time frame, how much time should we budget for design work, how much time should we budget for internal town review process and construction, they felt that it was absolutely adequate period of time, that the only variable that we can't control is weather. So if we come into like the construction time, which, you know, if you looked at a bar of how the time breaks up, all of the preparatory work and review is like this part of the bar, and construction's that part of the bar. It's months and months and months, and then it's 2 weeks and you're done. So we're assuming 6 weeks, but it's a very fast project. If weather interfered with that, say it rained the entire 2 weeks and they could get their equipment out, well, and we blew by the deadline, that would be a good reason for the state to give us an extension. They do allow extensions. Without having the funding in hand from the special town meeting, and instead thinking about operating funds for this, I also wanted to update you. We are at the final draft of the Complete Streets application, and Tech put together the project budget, presented it to their contact at the Highway Department, who reviewed it and made changes so that it is consistent with what they expect it to be. And that change, that review and change, resulted in a total project cost coming down. So the design funds that we would be looking for is $49,433, or we can call it $50,000. So let's say we hear in January, yes, then we would be looking to find operating funds to fund whichever of the 4 projects, if any, or all of them, to fund the engineering of that. The hope is that because the dollar amount is now so much lower, there will be capacity in Gary's budget, and he has indicated that there is. So I think this may be resolved within FY '19, and within the parameters of the existing budgets.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand what I'm hearing. So this 85,000 went down to 49,000.
Yes.
And the question is, can that be funded out of the existing operating budget?
That's the question.
And so, we should find that out. I mean, it's in a very similar situation as to the other two articles, which would mean we're having a town meeting for absolutely no reason at all.
Yeah.
It can also be funded out of chapter 90 highway.
Yeah, but we talked about that last time, you know.
And it wasn't Gary's
I'd rather-
preferred
I'd rather
solution.
find
It would
another
mean
way of doing
you'd be
'cause-
doing somewhat less paving.
What was the other thing we just did? Last time it was.
We talked
this-
about free cash, chapter 90, and
The pathway account.
and the pathway account. The pathway account cannot do all of it, because it can only take care of whatever is doing, it's pathways. Chapter 90, I think, would not be that bad, because it's for the purpose. It's also not the 84, now it's, you know, it's half of that. Gary, I think, said he would probably be okay with that. And that is something that we could backfill next year.
Well, we can't put into chapter 90, but
No,
if we
we
took
could
out
back-
of his rest of his
we-
budget, we could backfill
That's,
it.
that's what I'm saying, we
That's
could
what you're
backfill it, you
proposing.
see,
Yeah.
so that he wouldn't lose a whole season of paving, for instance.
Right, but I thought
So-
last time we decided we weren't gonna take it out of chapter 90, we were gonna take it out of the operating budget.
Right.
Yeah, and he
I
agreed.
still fully support
Yeah.
doing that.
Okay. well,
But, you know, if this is down to 49, I think we should do more,
Let me
do a
just-
closer look.
This is just the details, so you have a
at-
sense of.
At the requirement of, I guess what I'd like to do before we make a decision is just ask, you know, because it is even $49,000 and there's a lot of people here. Is there anybody who is here who wanted to talk about Article 3? Okay.
Jen.
Just wanted to see if there was any strong opposition to Article 3. Not seeing any, I think, what I would propose is that we not take a position on this tonight, and we learn more about the potential funding mechanisms and know whether or not we even have to move this at town meeting. Because we'll have to raise more money if this is moved. If we already have the money, why raise the money,
Right.
Yep.
right? Don't want to increase taxes for no reason at all.
Yeah.
You know, could I just add that if we were not otherwise having a town meeting for a larger request, there's no way we would be calling a town meeting for this. Instead, if we were awarded the grants, we would be looking at internal funds and funding it that way. And so, removing the article or withdrawing the article, you know, from that perspective, you know, makes some sense.
Okay.
So
All right,
you'd be
great.
willing to withdraw the
Yes,
article or not move it?
so long as we are committed to identifying operating funds so we can act on an approved grant.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Yes,
Gary
that's-
was okay with 85,000,
Yes.
and we could then subsequently make it up with free cash, we thought, right?
Right.
That
Yeah,
was-
but
he
that
was- he
can't
was
be
okay
done
with
that was
until,
Right.
yeah, that's a different process.
Yeah. Well, does this in any way jeopardize your ability to get the grant if you don't have this kind of stuff lined up?
We have included in our narrative that we are going to special town meeting to request design funds. So if we withdraw it before we submit the application, I need to edit that out. If we don't know that before the 1st of October, then we'll leave it in.
Okay.
I mean, actually Friday.
I see a puzzled look back there. Did you want to ask a question?
You me?
Yeah.
No, I'm just so tired of.
Oh, okay. Didn't mean to call you out. I just want to give you an opportunity. Won't do that again. Okay, so
We should ask her
I'm
if
gonna
she's
propose
pregnant.
that we not take a position on this
Yeah,
tonight,
I
and,
agree.
You still have to know before October 1st,
We either,
we're going to withdraw this or not.
it's accurate.
October 1st, you mean the town meeting?
No, that's on the second.
That's on the second.
And we're uploading on Friday.
But you could
Right.
say, you know, either via special town meeting or current operating budget. I mean.
I'll do that.
Yeah, why don't you just do that?
I'll do that.
And I think that we're looking to you to
Right.
figure out where the
Yeah.
other funds might come
I'll
from.
talk with
right?
Gary tomorrow.
Is a special town meeting needed or not?
Yeah.
You know, can you find that money elsewhere?
It really sounds like it's not.
Would this be okay with FinCom? This process, yeah. Okay, okay. Great, thank you.
So we can't just withdraw the warrant?
Yes,
Yeah, why don't we do that?
you just don't
Not
move it.
before town meeting, yeah, you don't move it at town meeting. It's on the
We can't
warrant.
It's not,
Withdraw
you
it.
can't withdraw.
It's already on
It's
the
out
warrant.
there.
If we, what you can do is not move, make the motion.
And we're gonna,
Okay.
you know,
Under
so,
that article.
so I think I haven't heard back, but, so we're gonna move on to Articles 1 and 2, so.
Okay.
all right.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
We may have to go to Blackboard and tell everybody to stay home.
So I wasn't at the meeting, but I did get a report kind of what was going on, but would you mind just kind of giving a brief
Sure.
summary of what happened on Article 1 and 2?
Absolutely. Do I give my name again?
No, you don't have to do the name again.
Yeah, so we discussed Articles 1 and 2 as well. And we actually had representation from the schools. So Lori Hunter, Christine Lear, and Mary Stores are representatives in that, were in attendance. And I think, in general, I think it's a very similar type of question, right? It's like, well, why now? You know, you're kind of putting it into a special town meeting. And so we were asking questions in that vein. And then essentially Laurie brought up this, two things. One, their number went down by 1/4, or
No,
by 3/4, down to 1/4. So 200 to 50,000. And then they said, well, we've also come about with alternatives, potential alternative sources of funding this. Not only that, but some of the other things that they were asking as well, in terms of some of the remediation work and whatnot, which is in Article 1. With that being uncertain, we decided not to take a position in it on either of those articles, because ultimately we may not take a position at all if they find the funding for those two articles outside, with the reduction of the 200,050 as well. So we decided not to take a position. We will meet just before town meeting and have two things: a discussion around those two if needed, as well as approve a statement for Article 3 if we actually have to, in that regard as well. So we're drafting, the statement kind of is consistent with what I shared with you in terms of that. It will be an official statement from FinCom.
Okay, I would propose that the Board of Selectmen do exactly the same thing.
Second motion.
You know, I do not think that we should take a
we don't-
motion.
We don't have enough information.
A position on something that may not even happen.
That's
But I
right.
think that what that means is, the next question is, if we don't need either one of, any of these warrant articles, I mean, we tried to be very, very responsive, put this town meeting out there and everything. What do we do if we're, we're not gonna call everybody out to not move 3 warrant articles. There's nothing else in the town
Maybe
meeting.
we'd have a hard time getting a quorum.
And we'd have a very hard time getting a quorum, so
Well,
what
Kimball's
is-
isn't closed yet.
what is the process of canceling a town meeting?
Well, you really can't cancel it once it's been posted,
Okay.
so.
We could send out a Blackboard saying,
So what happens
Stay home.
when you have a town meeting and nobody shows up? Are you obligated to try again?
Well, normally, the moderator and the town clerk absolutely have to be there. Whoever else shows up, it's up to them. They can adjourn it to a time certain, a
next
future
next
date and
spring.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
And where hopefully you'd have a quorum, and then,
And then not move them?
and then pass over the 3
So
articles.
we would have to know
and then
exactly
dissolve the
when
town
our
meeting.
spring town meeting was and adjourn it to that time?
Well, I'd have to check on how far you can push out a town meeting. There may be something in the statute that you can only do it for 30 or 45 days, or
So we're gonna have to
90
wait
days.
every 45 days.
Well, we can have it,
Well,
we
we
can
could,
go
yeah, we
over
could have
here,
town meeting at the Board of Selectmen
and
meeting.
then we just.
Well, the
we
best
keep
thing that
it
could
going.
happen is there'd be a quorum there Tuesday night, and the town meeting would just pass over the 3 articles and dissolve the town meeting, and then you've satisfied the warrant,
Wow, what a waste of time.
if
Could we
that's,
set
if
a
that's where we
special
are.
quorum for that meeting?
No.
Could we set a quorum for spring town meetings as opposed to,
If
I
we
mean,
have a
fall
town meeting
meetings?
between now and then to do that, yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's right. A lot of, some towns have 0 quorum, they don't have a
Well, you know.
quorum requirement.
We should put that back on. I know we talked about it once.
All
so
right,
we
we're
should
not gonna
talk
solve
about it
that
again.
tonight, so
Yeah.
Okay.
basically, we are obligated to have a
To hold the
town
meeting.
on October 2nd.
Right.
Please come to
Either
it.
postpone
I
it
promise
or-
it will
or
be
to-
very, very short.
Commitment. I won't be
Well,
there.
we haven't heard from the
Yeah, we
school
have to hear
committee
from the
yet,
school
but
committee.
Yeah.
They
it
might
sounded
say-
like that's where they were heading.
Right.
Well, we were
funding
hoping
it
to get word
themselves.
from that meeting
Yeah,
tonight.
okay,
In
so,
which case, I guess they'd still have to hold their town meeting anyway with the same
They've got
problem.
about 12 or 14 articles in Concord. They're
Yeah,
go-
they have
they're
other
gonna
articles.
That's what
go
they
ahead
have
with the
lots
rest
of
of it
things.
anyway.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, this is not the only
oh,
thing on
what a
their
mess.
agenda.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we will post a Board of Selectmen meeting for before the town meeting on October 2nd.
6:15 sound right? The meeting's
Town
7?
meeting,
7?
6:30? We're not gonna have much to talk about.
6:50.
6:30? We'll
And
make sure the
so
thing
we'll-
comes
We'll have
posted.
that town meeting, oh, we do wanna vote on the Boy Scout thing, though.
Right.
And, at that time, we will take a position based upon what we've heard, and then when we go into town meeting, we will either be moving some articles based upon what we hear from the school committee, or not, but we will not be moving Article 3. And your homework assignment is figuring out how we not move Article 3.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Talk to Wayne as well.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Procedure, yeah.
All
Not
right.
at all.
The quorum number is what?
Thank you, Victor.
150.
150?
Yeah.
Quorum is 150.
Something like that.
They're
Your
doing
voice
so
is
well.
So good.
Because they have
Okay.
digital entertainment.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's because they're so good.
That's true. Great parenting, that's what it is.
That's right. Yes, your wife does a very good job.
She does a very good job. I however, do not.
Okay, so it's 8:05. We'll pick up speed now. Luke is leaving.
I haven't said anything.
He hasn't, it's true.
I know, it's kind of
Sorry.
hard. You must not be feeling well.
I just want to go home. Do
All
I need
right,
to
so we're
sign
gonna
those
move
things?
on to the,
Yes.
To be
Oh,
signed
the
tonight?
Warrants,
The-
the warrants.
No,
Sign the proclamations.
proclamations?
Yeah.
can we move to that quickly?
Sure, come back.
Uh,
I just saw
For
that.
those of you here for solar bylaw, we're just gonna quickly move to a proclamation so that Luke can sign it. I'm sorry, it's gonna be like 3 minutes and then your dad will be able to leave.
Okay.
Two proclamations this evening,
Is
one
this Kay
for
Woodward's property?
declare
Or the
October
there's two.
2018 Concord Carlisle Community Chess Month. You've issued that proclamation in the past, and it's really the same proclamation updated for 2018. And there's a second one that honors Carlisle resident Kay Woodward on the occasion of her 100th birthday, which is October 5th. And if the board would approve both of those, then
Can I have?
Luke could sign them and.
Right, so
he
we'll
can be
just
on his
jump right,
way.
we'll just jump right into the community chest proclamation. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that proclamation? Which was in here.
Yes, it's in there. A lot of whereases and wherefores and now therefores. so
Okay, is there a motion on the community chest
I
proclamation?
move we approve the proclamation for the community chest.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Should I sign in black or
I think we should all do black.
black? No, probably better.
Okay, Catherine C. Kay Woodward proclamation.
And I move
Sam, go.
that we
Our son already left.
approve
Get the
the
card ready.
presentation of the Kay Woodward 100th birthday proclamation.
Is there a second? Okay, first and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. if you could sign this one.
Thank you.
And
And
you need
then a
my
couple,
pen back?
maybe,
unfortunately, so what we would like to do is see if there's a board member who is
Yeah.
able to present the proclamation to Kay Woodward.
I'd be able to, but I'd really love it if anybody else would be able to come with me.
I'd do that.
You do?
Okay, I'm unfortunately on a plane. But,
Yeah,
um,
okay. Where did you have us?
Right at the corner of
October 5th.
on Bedford.
No, she's on, South
Oh,
Road.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
Delivered
that
Meals
may
on
be-
Wheels.
All right, so just in case something moves, I mean, changes, but you'll take the lead and we'll see if we can come, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you all very, very
That's on
much.
October 5th.
Sorry that was so rushed, but
No, thank you.
Yeah.
You still have to sign it.
yeah, I think, yeah, I'll do down here. Okay. So, the update on municipal solar project. Everybody can come right on up, you don't need to. We have 3 chairs. Unless you're gonna be doing a presentation.
Well, do you want to see the PowerPoint presentation, or?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
have the slides in your packet.
Yeah.
If
I
you
think
wanna-
we have people here.
Okay.
Do you want to show it on the?
It would just take a few minutes to set it up, but.
Yeah, I think it would be good.
Okay. All right.
Sit up there, Jonathan.
Do you have it, Tim? I have a.
It's on the laptop. Yeah.
Delivered Meals on Wheels. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we'll need the screen down.
No, it's not an electric one, huh?
File's already there.
Is that black?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I have a thumb drive.
I think I got it.
So, we should go sit so that it's not.
Yes. This is
I don't know, we'll feel kind of conspicuous if you guys all leave.
Well, we
The bait and switch.
Yes.
We're going home.
Which one is it? High tech. Right.
Want the lights down at all?
Yeah, that would be.
You got it.
Oh, it's on it? Okay, there we go. Slide. I didn't know I'd have to do that. Beginning. Come on. There it is. All right, I guess if Bob gives me the high side.
Okay.
Right. Do you see that? Just let me know, Bob. and I'll-
Yep, I'm ready. Bob Clark from the Energy Task Force. So tonight, we're going to do an update from the Energy Task Force regarding the solar project and kind of backtrack in terms of review where we were from the last time. We were here last on May 25th. We got some marching orders then. And then we are going to, the second half of the presentation will be regarding something called the Solar Working Group, and I'll cover that when we get there. But to kind of back up, you can go to the next screen, with what the goals of the project were from the beginning, is to provide positive cash flow to the town of Carlisle, reduce Carlisle's carbon footprint, help meet our green community energy reduction goals, and also provide community solar opportunity for Carlisle residents who may not be able to take advantage of solar on their homes. So there was the new program for solar is called the SMART program. That's the main incentive program that's driving it versus the current SREC program. Now, SMART has not actually started yet. It's been delayed. We're projecting it's going to start in the fall, but nothing's guaranteed till it actually starts. We talked about before that, and formerly NSTAR, it's all owned by Eversource now, but the NSTAR territory, which is eastern Massachusetts, has the most attractive incentives. It has the highest base rate and has the least demand of systems due to the scarcity of land as compared to central Mass and western Mass. Systems are being gotten in the queue very quickly in western and central Mass right now versus the NSTAR territory is moving a little slower. In order to qualify for the SMART program, you basically need to have an interconnection service agreement with the utility, which means you've had to apply for it, go through all your studies, and you also need any permit approvals. Conservation Committee, Planning Board, et cetera, need to all be in place before you can apply for the SMART program. And it's a declining block system. We talked about that last meeting, but each utility they divided their amount of solar in this program into 8 blocks, and they're going to fill one block at a time. They go to the next block, and as they go to the next block, the total payment decreases by 4%. So there's a definite advantage to being in early in the program versus later in the program. And right now, the program hasn't even opened, but if you were getting approved right now, you're probably already in block 2, based on what we can see in terms of systems that have already applied for interconnection service agreements. So companies and towns are lining up to get their systems in the queue already. So we talked about possible sites. We've been going through this site qualification for some time, and we've really settled on 2 sites. One is the existing photovoltaics overlay district, which is around the land around the transfer station, including the transfer station, and a large PV system of at least 250 kW is approved by right. There have to be a site plan, but there does not have to be any special permits for that. You can have up to 1.5 acres of ground mount system according to the bylaw. So we were also looking at a parking canopy in the transfer station. So to add that piece of it, you would need a variance because of the height of the system and also exceeding a 1.5 acre system. Now, in terms of school sites, we had talked to the school board in the spring about sites around the school, also at Banna Davis. They were not comfortable with Banna Davis. They were comfortable with looking at a parking lot canopy in the parking lot and also looking at a ground mount system in between Spalding Field and the gym area. They were not approving anything, as basically, let's get the proposals and we'll look at it and evaluate from there. So that site, the school site, is a little more complex. It obviously needs school board approval. It would need a bylaw change because a large PV system is not allowed anywhere in the town other than in the solar PV overlay district. So there would need to be a change for that. So if you want to look at those locations, there's the solar overlay district, which you can see includes the transfer station and also the land between what's called Morse Road and Lowell, as well as a little section over by the, I guess, the shed for the waste materials. And then these Carlisle School, these are the areas with the school board approved looking at. You can see the parking lot canopy area in the main parking lot, and also a possible ground mount in between Spalding Field and the gym. And basically, May 25th, let's go back to that. So we decided at that point, discussion with the selectmen, there was an option before to talk about the town owning a system or just leasing a property and getting a payment. And the decision was that to solicit a ground lease, it was the best option, where the host is Carlisle, signed a 20-year lease agreement potentially buy solar electricity as a discount. And then there will also be a property tax payment. So pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, which is typically done for a public solar project where a personal property tax payment is agreed upon. The provider would own the solar system, would maintain the system. They would also take all the tax credits, depreciation, and incentives. So we talked about next steps at the May 25th meeting, and there are basically 3 steps up to this point, which was to go out to an RFP, send it to solar developers. That happened in June. The proposals were due in early August. So we wanted to make an evaluation of the RFP and select potential preferred developers, and then also present the proposals information back to the selectmen. So, we got 3 valid and acceptable proposals. They met all the requirements. Companies were Amoresco, Sunbug Solar, and Verigy. The next step really was, how to evaluate the proposals. And so at Tim's direction, he formed what we call the Solar Working Group, and that was a group reporting to Tim on terms of the recommendations on the proposal, and that consisted of Bill Rizzo and Helen Young and Jonathan Koch. And so we met, and myself, yes,
Yeah.
Bob Clark. So we met several times. We also went back out with some clarifications and questions to all 3 respondents, and got responses back from those 3 companies. So what I'd like to do next is kind of give you more the visual overview of what the systems might look like. The quality is, we had to scan these in, so the quality of some of these aren't as good as I would like, but at least it gives you an idea. So we randomly assigned the companies A, B, and C. This is company A, and we'll look at the PV overlay district first. So they were looking at a ground mount system that's a 1.5 acre system, and a canopy system. So if we go to the next slide. Sure.
The canopy would have to be quite tall.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay. So the ground mount they proposed was 505 kilowatts. Look, the size is correct to meet the location would have to be modified because there's a drainage ditch that goes across the overlay district in the woods. So they're showing going over that, which they can't do. So that would obviously have to be modified. So that's a 505 kilowatt system. And the next screen shows what they proposed for an overlay, which is actually pretty unique, and we didn't really thought of it that way. We had actually gotten approval from Gary, Gary Davis, at the DPW to be able to put canopies at the transfer station. He had a minimum height of 15 and a half feet, and the idea is that they wouldn't go over the bins, because when they empty the bins, they have to raise them and gets up quite high. This company's approach was actually to provide 30-foot high canopies, which would be have enough clearance for whatever you're doing in there. But obviously, it would have to be talked about in detail. But it was kind of a unique approach, but it let them get a large system of 463 kilowatts with that system.
So the part in the woods is 500 some odd?
Yep, 505.
Plus this?
Yes. So it's like 968 kW is what they've proposed at the overlay district. Okay, next. So company B, it's sort of location more acceptable in our view because you can see the drainage ditch in this scenario. So they're all on this side of it, which is nice, because it's far away from the road down there. And they're using a 1.5 acre system. That's a 330 kW system. And you're saying, why is that so different from A and B? But company A had a lower tilt on their panels and spaced their panels closer together, and that's why they proposed a denser, higher sort of watts per square foot option.
So in an example like this,
Mhm.
the trees to the right of the drainage area along the road there, would those have to be taken out, or
So
is the like restrictions essentially?
So all these screens, south is the bottom of the screen in every screen, in every
Okay, south is the bottom.
yes. But that's showing what, for all these systems, all the ground mount systems, they have to remove trees from a shading standpoint that don't shade. So,
Right, I'm just wondering about the blockage, from view. Everything there on the right of that blue line would not have to come down. Is that right?
well, they're possibly shading issues. So the bylaw calls for screening from the road, pretty clear. I would guess that companies would take down tall trees and put in lower shading, because the tall trees will shade. But those kind of details would have to come in sort of the negotiation part of the process. And then for them, they proposed kind of what we had thought they would, a typical proposal. Those are canopies about 15 feet high, basically, but nothing over the bins, nothing over the bins. So that system, though, is only 117 kilowatts versus 463 kilowatts. So that was the company C did not provide a bid for the PV overlay district. And just to be clear that, I didn't say that, but there's two sites. The sites are being evaluated independently. It could be different companies at different sites, and that thought's always been clear from the beginning. But we would not split one site into two companies. We wouldn't say this company has a better canopy bid and this is a ground mount bid, because you really need one application to the utility. So you have to pick one company per site.
Question?
Sure.
It looked like Company A used a lot less land than Company B, not the canopies, but
The ground mount? No, it actually was about the same. They said it was, they both said it's 1.5 acres. And the land is actually, it's the fenced-in area is what they're talking about, so to the fence. It's kind of hard to tell, though, looking at that drawing. But it's, they both insist it's 1.5 acres.
they max out at 1.5 because of the bylaw.
Because of the bylaw, correct. But I think the committee, the working group, thinks that makes sense based on the trees that would have to come down for shading and the fact that there's that stream there, that getting a larger system there doesn't necessarily make sense anyway. That's kind of the working group's feeling. Okay, so let's go to the school. Company A at the school initially proposed a ground mount system in a parking canopy. If we go to so you can see that ground mount system is larger than the initial area we gave them in terms of where to work in. So they sort of on their own proposed what we would call a larger system. And the working group had some concerns and asked all the companies to make sure you have we would like to have a 1.5 acre solution at each site, that's what we basically said to the companies, so that if the bylaw was expanded to this site, we wouldn't necessarily want to change the bylaw to increase the size as well. So we wanted to have a 1.5 acre solution at the school. So if we go to the next screen, it shows more of the detail on that larger system. So they did offer, so that ground mount system, that's 786 kilowatts. It's a 2 acre system. And they also proposed a 1.5 acre system around 500 kilowatts, but they did not give us a updated drawing.
The array in the bus pickup and drop-off area could cause some logistical area there issues.
Yeah, I think that all needs to be closely figured out. I guess that's a good point. I think at this point, what's that?
I wouldn't put it there.
Okay, and then the canopy, so that's a closer look at that. So they had 526 kilowatts. So a lot of this canopy stuff depends.
Do the canopies actually block rainfall from going through them, or are they individual cells?
They're individual, they don't, they're individual solar panels that are not sealed between modules, so most water would actually drip down to the end, but some water would also drip through in between solar panels. But part of the whole thing on canopies is how high is it? What's the clearance? What's the overall height? Where are the actual mounting columns going to be? And how big are those columns going to be? And those parameters kind of help you to decide to say, is that acceptable or not in terms of all those locations. Okay. And this company B, they had that's a 1.5 acre ground mount system, which is 428 kilowatts. Kind of more in line with where we originally placed the system. And then their canopy is 356 kilowatts. Similar to Company A, but their canopies are just not as large, most of them, so that's why it's smaller. And then Company C only proposed this canopy option, and theirs was 315 kilowatts. But overall, you can see the three companies had a pretty similar opinion on what made sense for the canopies.
Any sense on why they didn't choose, why they chose not to have the additional acre and a half?
Their statement was they didn't feel it was a good idea to take trees down to put solar for small ground mount systems. All right, so here's the, try to summarize this on one screen, is the estimated lease and pilot cash flow. So we basically because there is no defined pilot agreement, and that would take some official work to get to decide what that is. We basically let the vendors, told them there should be a pilot, but we let them decide what that amount was. The general point of these systems is as a developer, they're looking at an overall payment. So they don't really care whether it's a pilot or a lease. They're going to pay a certain amount of total money. So if you told them the pilot had to be more, well, that would have to come out of the lease. So it's really, we tried to present the overall payment from the developers. And one thing I'll just say up front is, so these numbers are quite a bit higher than we projected. The systems are larger. I think costs of solar module costs have come down for the large scale projects over the last 6 months. So it's been pretty fortunate. And also, like I said, the Western and Central Mass blocks are just about filling up. I can see them in the first few days, not much being left over. So I think these companies are seeing, well, this next opportunity is in this NSTAR area, Eversource area. So Company A had for the PV overlay, had a project size of 969 kW. They have a year one cash flow of $80,000 and a 20-year cash flow of $1.6 million. Staying with the PV overlay district, Company B had a 447 kW system, $34,000 year one cash flow, and a 20-year cash flow of $793,000. There's a little difference there because Company B had a 2% escalator on their lease payment, and Company A and C had a fixed 20-year payment on all their payments. So, sure.
The slide before that, was that in the school parking lot?
Yeah, that's the school
That's
parking
the
lot.
school parking lot,
Yes.
so then what happens to the cars?
Oh, no, the cars will park, this is overlay, this is 14 and a half feet high. So cars park underneath this.
Underneath it?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay, and then the, on the school, so the Company A had 1.3 megawatt total system size, $84,000 annual payment in year one, and 1.675 million 20-year cash flow. Company B had 784 kilowatts, $62,000 year one, and 1.45 million 20-year cash flow. Company C, with the parking canopy only, had 315 kilowatts. I'm not sure you can see it, but it's $22,000 in the first year and $436,000 over 20 years. Good.
I can't quite figure out if the projects are generally the same size land area. Well,
Land area,
is double the production of electricity in the proposal Company B. I'm looking at the graphics and they look sort of in the same sort of general area.
so for the PV overlay, the Company A had a very large parking canopy versus Company B, it was like 463 versus 120, so that's a lot of the big difference there. And Company A, on their ground mount systems, spaced them much closer and had they're like 15 degrees spaced closer versus Company B had them at 25 degrees, and they have to be spaced farther apart so they don't, each row doesn't shade the row in between. So that's more a company philosophy, design standpoint.
Their performance is apples to apples?
Well, to some extent, they're just promising a lease payment. So their lease payment is based on performance of their system. But in the end, the town is just getting a fixed lease payment. If their system doesn't perform like they thought it was, we still get the same amount of money, basically.
And after 20 years,
Well, after 20 years, usually, I think that's,
So what I'd like to do is if we're all done with it, are we done?
no,
with
no, I
this?
got, sorry, I got a couple more,
Okay,
couple
so
more,
let's
couple
take
more.
questions until
Okay.
after.
Okay. So that's block 3, and I wanted to show you kind of the pain of waiting. So the next one shows block 4. So we were figuring if a system project got going fairly soon, you could probably still get into block 3. But if you don't get into block 3 and you go block 4, which the school is more likely to be in block 4, just from waiting to the spring, this shows the difference for block 4. So for Company A, there's a loss of $180,000 over 20 years and $200,000 over 20 years at the school from just dropping a block. And for Company B, it's not as, it's 104,000 and 161,000. So still very positive, but it definitely, the numbers start going down almost up to $10,000 a year for the Company A. Question?
Very basic question. So this is a cash flow for the town.
Yes.
You're leasing land and we're looking at leasing land and receiving this payment in exchange for land that's being used, that
Right.
will be used for solar.
Correct.
Want to understand.
Yep. No, that's good. Okay, and then kind of to wrap it up, is recommended next steps. This is what the solar working group recommends, is basically pursue the solar PV overlay project now. And the process would be to form a solar lease team to negotiate a lease which would include town administrator, board of selectmen member, energy task force member, and with the assistance of town council or whoever else the BOS might designate. And then use that team to negotiate a lease with the preferred developer for a ground mount and a canopy system at the solar overlay district. Our second recommendation is to pursue the Carlisle School PV project with the objective of having it approved at town meeting in terms of whatever needs to be approved in terms of a bylaw. And that would require, first of all, working with the school board to get their feedback and get an approved scope of work. And then again, the solar lease, I think the same solar lease team would negotiate with whoever the preferred developer is for that system. At the same time, we would have to develop a bylaw change to allow the school project and vote on the bylaw in a pilot at town meeting. So that's the end of the presentation. Question? All right, okay.
I'll take the questions.
Okay, sorry.
Oops, sorry.
Okay.
You know, we go the other way. Don't break
No, no,
your,
I'm okay,
don't
I'm
break
okay.
your ankle.
Again.
Don't even joke about it.
Okay, I had a
Oh, good work, Bill, there we go.
Need solar.
I just want to ask a couple questions first. One is, have you been speaking with the planning board who would have to do the site plan review? Like the overlay district has, I believe, has to go through site plan review.
Correct.
And so I think getting some indication with them on any initial design might be good before entering into a lease in case there's something that falls apart. You know, I would just suggest having them a part of this process for, you know, as early as possible so that they can help direct things so that there aren't any.
That may be a recommendation of having a planning board member on the
Yeah,
negotiating team.
it could be, yes.
Because as things move around, you know, as we negotiate.
Yeah.
you would need-
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can be, if they're also the people who would decide whether or not it's
Whether or not they
appropriate,
get it.
but maybe Tim, you know, if,
Yeah.
but at the very least, just getting them involved very early, so you don't get down through things and sign things and then find that something they're gonna require makes it not economical, and we've already signed a lease. So that was just the first thing I wanted to do, and now I'll take questions, and I'll have other questions afterwards, and
I
I'm
have a
sure other
question.
people will as well. But are there any other questions? Yes. Could you come up and please and state your name and address and?
Tatiana White, 36 Aberdeen. I've had solar in my house for 6 years and did a lease arrangement. And one of the things to be aware of is that some of the solar leasing companies go out of business, like mine did. So when you do this, just look at the contractual and what that implies for the town if the provider goes out of business.
Okay, thank you. And there was somebody else.
You have to go up there to ask a question.
You have to come up here just because it's televised and the people can't hear you on TV unless you're up here. So if you could come up and state your name and your address and then speak into the mic so that people watching on TV can hear you.
Ed Helm, 776 East Street. Question about, will cars run into the structure? And the other thing is, if they have to replace the parking lot for something, like the surface needs replacement because there's holes and everything, how does that work?
Well, I think there's a lot of
You
canopies.
need a mic.
Just turn this one over.
I mean, there's a lot of canopies around. I mean, hopefully cars won't run into them. They try to build them pretty sturdy in terms of the column and the structure and supports. I mean, so I'm not overly concerned about that piece of it. And the second part was
Paving.
Paving.
Well, paving, I assume you're talking about the school? we talked with the school board, that was one of the things that they were looking at, is if they get their parking lot repaved, and that's something that could be negotiated, because they're gonna do some digging anyway, and conduits run in the pavement to connect all this stuff together.
Maybe they
So,
can get some paving out of it.
the heights of the arrays, the canopies will definitely be, you know, able to have a paving machine in there and do the paving. That's the intent for the 15 or 30 foot.
Probably lighting issues too.
Yes.
The canopy.
Yeah, so generally, there is actually lighting underneath the canopy, because otherwise, you know, the overhead lights aren't really effective. So, yeah, so that's part of the installation.
Okay. Yes.
To go all night long. Jan Corneal, 195 Acton Street. What is the design process for the solar array? I don't mean the review process, I mean the actual design process. Does the company that we contract with do all the design work, and the town is just reviewing, or does the lease team have some input into that design?
So I guess I would see that the lease team would have kind of conceptual input into the design and also locational input. You know, the time the lease is signed, the company will have to know exactly where the system was go. They can't say, we'll put it here and then decide to put it where. That doesn't work. So generally, I mean, we asked for a pretty specific RFP in terms of each company specified the equipment they're using, how they're mounting the equipment into the soil, what kind of panels, what kind of inverters, and the purpose of the lease team would be to determine kind of the details needed to protect the town before they get into their final detailed design. For instance, on the canopies, we would want to know pretty specifically what their pre-design is in terms of where columns would go and that sort of thing. So in an RFP like this, they can provide some detail, but you can't expect them to kind of go too far without the expectation that they might get the job. So the next phase would be really determining all the details that would be, you know, part of the contract.
And also the input from the planning board, because we'll have site plan review. So the lease that's negotiated is going to have that piece in it, so that things can, because it's going to be a moving target basically until everything's decided.
Right. So ultimately, the planning board has approval over that. The design.
But there's still one more stop at the Board of Selectmen, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody, Carrie? I'll just start with
What happens after 20 years to the revenue stream?
Well, some companies want to be able to extend the lease. I mean, that's would need to be negotiated as part of that lease. I mean, usually the terms are they could have to remove the system and restore it to the original condition. I think we had town council develop the lease, and I think that's where what the base lease reads, that they have to restore the land to its existing condition. And some of the companies had comments, well, we'll do that, but we're not, you know, we can't, if there are trees there, we can't get those trees back. I mean, that's basically, so I mean, that's the way it stands now. They have to remove the system. But during negotiations, they may want to have options to extend the lease, additional payments, or we could also ask for that decision to be made later on. So it's a dual option. The town has the option and they have the option.
But are you saying we can't count on revenue beyond 20 years?
That's all that's bid at this point, yes.
And the pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, was for personal property tax.
Personal property tax.
So how does that, what's the size of that?
Yeah, it's included in those numbers. I really didn't, I can tell you, it was essentially $10,000 to $20,000 per megawatt, okay? So, per year. So,
for the company A, had basically a 1 megawatt system.
Is that included in the revenue?
That's included in the revenue stream.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So it's-
A comment, I guess. It was interesting to me that that Company C basically curtailed their zeal for this because they didn't want to cut down trees to create solar. You know, we are the lungs of Middlesex County here in Carlisle in terms of our forests and our tree population. And I guess I'd like to, from a perspective standpoint, I'm really torn about this whole thing. From a perspective standpoint, all of these numbers you've shown, it's the impact of adding 1 employee. It's the same as adding 1 employee or not adding 1 employee. That's the financial impact over a year and over a 20-year, time span. It's 1 employee. Just to put it into perspective, what do we want our town to become? And at what cost? And what do we lose in the process? So I'm trying to wrap my head around this, but you look at $1 million in new revenue, and we need the revenue. There's no question about it. But
Well, I would also, personal viewpoint, so, I mean, if you put in 2 houses, you'll remove the same amount of trees that this 1.5 acre solar system might do in a new development that's pulling out trees. And in that case, that's an additional cost from school costs and that sort of thing. And also, we have a lot of wonderful fields in this town that I would prefer to use that wouldn't take down any trees, but they're all have conservation restrictions of one sort of another.
Yep.
So we really, town owns a lot of property, but not much that's really available. So that's how we looked at it.
well, it's serving a different purpose.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the environmental savings of trees, we don't have breaking out, versus the carbon stored in those trees is much less than the carbon saved by the solar. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, Kate?
Well, I have a couple of questions. One is about maintenance, and what the standards of maintenance that would have to be maintained for these things. You don't want panels flying off onto the cars. And what would what sort of liability insurance? Who would be carrying it? Would it be them to be required, or is this more liability insurance that we're carrying? So those are.
So typically, the town would not change your insurance. That each developer would have to have property insurance as well as liability insurance that meets the requirements that are already detailed in the lease. So they're responsible for maintenance. They're responsible for liability.
What are the remedies if they don't? So there's things like that.
Correct.
And then I guess the pros and cons of pilot as opposed to payment and lose taxes rather than just, why don't we just tax them? I mean, have a lease, and we tax them on the personal property. So, I mean, why did?
Well, sounded like it
putting
might
out
not
there.
be as much.
It might, I don't know.
Yeah.
Might be less, might be more. The problem is towns have a hard time defining what that actually should be. And is it a high value now, and it's something that goes down a lot over time as it depreciates? And so the standard, and I think the state sort of supports this, supports the towns doing pilots. And they really like them to do a pilot versus not trying to tax them. They do want to tax, but they do kind of recommend a pilot because it's it's a known amount for the town. It's also a known amount for the developer. The developer, in order to get the best deal, needs to know you need to take risk out of it. So they're saying, we'll pay you a fixed amount. And they don't really care if it goes to pilot or lease, but they know what they can pay, and they know what they've proposed. So that's just usually how
wanted to
it's
have that
done. Yep.
out on the table.
All right. Alan?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. So I have some questions and I guess some comments. In taking a look at, because we're leasing, right? They want to get the maximum return they can get on the lease of that land. And it seemed to me very clear that A was doing much much denser, and really trying to maximize that. And I think kind of made it, I think they kind of went over the line, for me anyway. I mean, I haven't seen a design, but I think that B's looked better to me. They seem to kind of take into account, what might look good and, how it might conform with the drainage. I'm talking about the overlay district. And made it much, a little bit less impactful on the transfer station area where it's not in the middle of where everybody's driving. If you could imagine, at peak rush hour at the transfer station, people pulling in, and there's posts in the middle of that, open area. I mean, I think that could create some mayhem. And so, personally, I liked B a little bit better. I thought it was a little bit more respectful for kind of what Carlisle would do, understanding it's less power and it's less money. I don't think this is just all about money, right? But I would also say that I really think that they shouldn't put a canopy over where the buses go. I think that it's just going to make it tough to get buses in and out, and I guess ultimately it's a school committee decision, but
spans can be very long, I mean,
yeah,
depends on the design.
Yeah, they can. I think it's,
Exactly.
again, for me, that's just a little bit more pushing it a little bit too far, where, in what they did, I liked how they offset some of the carports, whereas the other one, it was just these giant spans. And they had, I think, a better design, and less impactful design between the gym and in Spalding Field. It was further back. It was a little bit more condensed. I think that they just put more, thought in it. Obviously, not as much thought into the people who don't even want to take down a tree. But and not to say that we shouldn't, that we should be taking down all the trees. But, I personally like theirs a little bit better.
A couple of things that probably you guys aren't aware of is that the group made us recommendations to Tim, and Tim has the working sheet, if you will, of what the working group came up with for recommendations. When you go into the negotiations, all three layouts, depending on which one is the better one, it can be negotiated. So what the working group did was evaluate the companies upon what the RFP asked for, and then what we thought was the best solution and the best company, and the one that we should start negotiating with first. And if we fail negotiations with that first one, then we'd roll down to the second one. And that's all in the recommendations that we had provided to Tim.
Okay. Did we see those?
Probably didn't, because it's a working group.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess my preference is B, with taking out a little bit more, just to make it better. But I have a question about, well, first of all, it seems like there's been a draft lease. That would be a lease from the Board of Selectmen, right? So could we see that lease in an early draft, just so that?
Sure, yeah, it was in the RFP.
Yeah, I don't think we saw the RFP,
No, we
did we?
didn't see that either.
Yeah, I don't think we saw the RFP. It'd be great to see that, just so we have the history of this, because we're gonna own this long-term, and
Yes.
it'd just be good to have, have all the data possible.
Question in the audience.
Yep, I'm not done. The other question I had was, or comment that I had was, the A, and the canopy. Did they really think that they could put that large an array over that entire open area?
You're talking about the
For A?
solar district?
Yeah.
No, well,
Right over the transfer station. I mean, it's,
we went, okay.
We had some concerns, but they have a sample system at another town, and it's a town which I would say it's pretty concerned about aesthetics. So I think we would want to see that before any decision was made on that.
Is this the one that's 30 feet?
Yes, and we also did have a discussion with Gary Davis about where the canopy would go. So that particular one that was shown is not really what Gary had signed off on and said, yeah, I can work with. So there was, you know, things going on behind the scenes that
Yeah,
those
okay.
proposals don't actually represent what kind of where we are at now.
Right, I mean, so the way I look at this, and clearly this is not design and it's not 3D
No,
or
it's just
anything like that, but
It's just a box.
you
put
have
down.
this giant canopy 30 feet up, and then you're taking down all the trees in order to build this other solar array
On the side.
down the hill,
Right.
all the way down to the road.
Street.
This canopy is gonna be seen all the way up the road
It's up
and
on the
by the
hill.
people across the street.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's why I don't personally like that one, but it's not designed, right?
Right.
It's not negotiated. All right, was there another question in the?
Yeah, more a comment. Sudbury High School has canopies in their parking lots if you want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I've seen them, yep, thanks.
Also, there's a large canopy at the Weldon Pond, at the
Mhm.
visitor center. Take a look at that one, too.
Okay, any other questions? So the next steps is, you can send us the RFP, you can send us the RFP and the lease, and tonight you're looking for,
Selectmen may be setting up a
Oh, the
committee to
committee
negotiate,
to-
start moving towards at least
Oh.
working in the PV in the solar district area.
but not selecting yet, because we would be part of the process of selecting, right?
Selecting which company?
The vendor, yeah, the company. Who
Um,
selects the company?
You guys select the company. Tim may share the recommendations from the working group with you.
Right, so the working group would go work on this and come back and say, this is our recommendation.
We've already done that. It's already done in the paper that we gave to Tim.
They've already
So,
made a recommendation.
We've already made a recommendation, and our recommendation is to set up a committee or a group to start negotiating with that company to come up with a design that's compatible to Carlisle and the planning board and everybody.
Okay,
And
so without knowing who we've recommended or anything, I'd be hesitant to say, let's put together a group to go work with this.
What's the process? Do we talk about that now, or no?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Do we need the school committee to also have a representative?
Well,
this is just a
This is
photo.
only the
Oh,
solar.
only
light,
for the
it's not
PV, got it, got it, got it,
You know, the school
sorry.
committee,
And
there's
the
a lot more
yes,
steps to go
yeah,
through.
okay.
So I don't want,
okay.
you know, I don't know, I don't speak for the whole board, but for me personally, you know, I don't want to slow this down, but I don't want to put together a working group to go work with a vendor that I haven't seen the recommendation as to why we chose the vendor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Does that seem fair?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't think we can do it tonight. I think we need to get these pre-reading materials
yeah.
so that we could do this at our next meeting.
Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes.
So you get us the materials, we'll read it, let's meet next time. Everybody, we're gonna be talking about this next time.
Tim has some,
Um,
So are you gonna share this with them, or?
Yes, I think
Yep.
follow to do it.
I don't either.
Good. All right.
All right, so we won't be taking any action tonight. You'll get us more material, and we will continue the discussion at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll put you a little earlier on the agenda.
You mean at town meeting, that's not gonna happen?
Oh, that's right, we don't, we have the next,
Yeah, well.
it will not be at the next
Our
Board of
next
Selectmen
real
meeting.
meeting.
Our next, yeah, 2 weeks from today.
October 9th, yeah.
Oh, when I'm not here.
That'll move it along.
That's the next.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. I'm not here. Okay.
I'd be happy to talk about it in the cafeteria, if you want. Right here.
I want to make sure people, actually, that might bring people to town meeting.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Talk about bait and switch. Okay.
All right, so I'm way behind, but that's okay. It's better than being really early and not being able, and not being able to take things up.
That's true.
Master Planning Steering Committee. Who's here for Master Planning Steering Committee?
Cornet.
You have a handout, right, or do you want to project?
We have a handout.
We have,
We have
We had
that.
those slides in your packet, so we could
Yes, and they were upside down.
Depends on if the audience is here for it. It's all on the website.
Is everybody here to talk about, let's go ahead and present. Let's,
Just here.
no, let's.
Up
let's-
there? Okay.
yeah.
It's all on the website too, so.
I just,
All right.
let's make it so that everybody can, I want to be inclusive.
So, do we need to decamp?
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to see it, but everyone else has not.
It's already set up.
Unless everybody leaves.
Unless everybody needs to-
Getting a lot of exercise tonight, eh?
No, back up, that, no. Which one? The agenda.
That one.
That one.
Okay, it's gonna take a minute
You
here.
wanna push it along?
I could do, yeah, you can just give me the high sign, yeah.
So I'm going to try to keep this brief. Jan Corneal, I'm the chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee. Many of you may already know most of this, so I'll just try to whiz through it. Most of this information is on our newly minted website, or under development website. So we formed fully formed a committee in the beginning of September with 7 members. Tatiana White is with me today. And our objective is this fall to do our due diligence and prepare an RFP to go through all the process to get it out, to hire a consultant, to get approval at town meeting in April 2019, and hire a consultant. So we're doing our due diligence on that front. But before I do that, I wanted to give you just a bit of a feedback on the ideas workshop that we held back in the end of June. I don't know if you all were there. There were over 100 people there, including 15 teenagers, which was pretty impressive. And we basically had 2 hours together where we looked at a PowerPoint together, some materials just to get people thinking outside the box, and then we did an interactive session with a feedback, with a report back at the end. We had maps, base maps, and things to play with, little blocks and stickies and all kinds of funny little things. And we had a number of topics that we had been vetting. It's basically anything anybody had ever talked about relative to the master plan. And our goal was to get to solicit input from the group. And then we had a series of questions that were trying to get the discussion going, and there were facilitators at each table that were using these questions as a guide if the group got caught up on it. So what we did over the summer is that we prepared we made a matrix of every single comment that anyone had made and recorded, and then we analyzed to see which were the top 10, and the top 10 recurring themes. Which I'll go through. All of this is on the website if you want to take a closer look. I'm not going to read through all of this. I'll just give you the highlight of the 10 themes. So clearly the community center was at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. There were several, most groups talked about the need for a community center, a facility that the community could use. But in a larger context, there was also this need beyond an actual community center to start thinking about how we support greater interaction and bring people together in more venues across generations in town. Housing was definitely a topic. People were very interested in increasing the diversity of housing options in Carlisle, and there were many people who wanted those options to be targeted towards people that couldn't afford to live in Carlisle. A big topic was a question about how we can start looking at creative solutions, like the solar lease agreement, to create revenue streams other than just the residential tax base. The town center, the question of what to do in town center was really at the forefront of people's minds, in terms of activities, in terms of solving some of the technical issues with septic and water, in terms of thinking about new kinds of businesses and uses. Walkability, we were very focused on paths and safety and crosswalks and connecting with the trail system and really making Carlisle more walkable for people of all ages. And leading into transportation is seen as a big black hole in Carlisle, and what is it we can do in this age of shared shared automation, automated mobility? What are the opportunities we have as a small town? And lots of things are happening in that area. Conservation and recreation is seen as very intertwined with Carlisle's identity and an incredibly important attribute of the town, as are agricultural uses. But people were talking about how, like Clark Farm and Great Brook, there's this sort of look at new ways of creating more economic viability for the kind of agritourism kind of uses. Thinking outside of the box in terms of what other uses you can combine with a farm to make it, to create more income and make it more of a connector. And then finally, sustainability. People were all over the map talking about climate change to energy and water, town-wide energy, water conservation, and recycling and trash, the whole array, but not just looking at environmental sustainability, also thinking about how to embed in this master plan economic and social sustainability or community sustainability. We have a website, www.carlisleplan.org, which is up and running as of last week. And we are populating it pretty rapidly with materials that we've created and things that we think that the town should be aware of as we develop our process. So we've talked to Tim about reporting to you short reports every month now through January, February, until we get an RFP going and beyond that. We talked about doing a report to town meeting. I'm not sure, well, it sounds like there might not be much going on at town meeting, but I'm not sure we got on the agenda, so I'm not sure that's going to happen. But our goal is to get in front of all of you by the end of the year with a draft RFP. We're going to do all of our due diligence. We're looking at comparable. We did some of this research last year, but we're going to format it and provide it in terms of what other towns, the budgets that other towns have created. We've been talking with planning consultants other than myself. We've been kind of getting more input. And we've started really laying out a whole process and understanding the timeline and what we think the budget will be. So we'll be able to give you a lot more, vetted information about what we really think this budget needs to be for moving forward. So that's where we're at.
Is there a link from the town website to Carlisle Plan, Tim?
I'm not sure we got that yet. Is it?
Can I just cover a couple of things?
Sure, yeah, we'll just sit down. Yep.
So with respect to the website, there are some
feedback about what should be on the website, and we welcome your feedback, but more tangentially, if you can provide us the content that you think would be appropriate to have there, either as a link from the town website or as other resources that would be appropriate, that'd be great, instead of us creating it from scratch. If it exists somewhere online and we should link to it, let us know where, and we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, right, and then vice versa, we should be linking.
Right, so the town website should link to this.
Right, exactly. And so I guess, so I hadn't heard about it being on the agenda for town meeting. When is, I mean, this might be a way of getting people to come to town meeting. You might be the only agenda item. We should talk about,
I think
I don't know how
we,
you get things on the agenda. I mean, can you just add, or
Well,
is it already
you'd have to
posted?
talk to the moderator. I know.
Okay.
yeah, Peter Gambino was trying to sort that out, and I did not hear didn't get a final answer back on it.
So there are a couple of things going on. One of the things that's not really clear from the pictures is that it was a really, really hot day in June when we did that workshop. And I don't know how many of you were there, but it was really hot. And I know, because I tried to edit the audio, and you can hear the fan and nothing else. So the fact that so many people showed up shows how much interest there is in the subject. We're trying to carry that interest forward, and one of the ways we're doing that is by forming an advisory committee. And if we do have an opportunity to present at the town meeting, we'd like to use it as a recruitment or information for people to get involved in the advisory committee to continue the community involvement in the process.
Yeah, we've written an ad for the mosquito. We'll put out something on the website, but it would, if there is a large group of people convening, it would be good to get that out there.
We don't know how large.
Yeah.
But Tim, maybe would you set something up, like maybe you, Wayne, and I could just chat about how it
Sure.
might happen?
Yeah, I'll contact Mike tomorrow.
Okay, great, thanks.
I want to know what's going on. A few minutes ago, maybe you saw the breaking news.
I did get that, well, I got a text from Mary.
Oh.
They're not going to move.
They are not gonna move the motion, so we are,
We're not gonna move.
we
We're
are,
not gonna move.
we are motionless.
So we're just getting together.
Getting together, maybe we'll buy some pizza.
It's unwarranted.
Well, we're
It's unwarranted.
we're happy to give a short presentation, but I don't think we're ready to do another community workshop.
No, what I think we need to do is we need to do kind of a summary that you just did and describe what the advisory board is all about,
Yeah.
and talk about the role, and have people who are interested, express that interest more formally.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, well, we need to figure out what to do, so maybe you, Wayne, and I can.
You wouldn't even need a quorum for that. Well, we have to have a quorum to have the town meeting.
We have to have a quorum for town meeting, it never goes away.
Well, if
Yeah.
we don't have a quorum, can we just have an information session on the master
If we don't
plan?
have a quorum, we just don't have, we can't have a town meeting.
But
People could hang around if they wanted.
Well, they
Right,
could just
so
hang
that's-
around,
that's
so we
what I'm
could
saying.
just say,
If
we're not having a
people are
town
gonna
meeting,
show
and
up
then.
and we
yeah.
don't really need a town meeting, it
Right.
sounds like.
Yep.
We can just do an information session on
Right.
this, and.
You don't need one, we need one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have
We
stuff
need
that
150
we need.
people to show up for a
But-
meeting that
but-
we're not gonna talk about
Yes,
anything.
but we could use them as bait.
Yes.
Oh my God.
This is being televised, you know.
So, to use your language, we actually have a mailing list of all the people who showed up, and there was about 100 people that showed up.
There you go.
And we can, if
Bingo.
you put us on the agenda, we can send to that mailing list that we're gonna talk about this at the town meeting, and whatever else you want me to put
Yeah.
on, what's gonna be at the town meeting, I can talk to Wayne and find out.
Yeah, so we'll talk to Wayne and figure out,
The moderator runs town meeting.
right,
and the
we
board doesn't.
we don't
Yes,
pick what's
no.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's gonna be his decision
think
how we deal with
we could
this,
do a
and
little arm twisting.
we'll
I still
talk
think
about
we
it.
need about 15 gallons of Kimball's ice cream. And tell people it'll be available.
Pizza and beer.
Yeah, pizza.
Pizza and beer.
So in terms of the schedule then, we'll go to town meeting in April to get approval for spending for consultants' assistance. And then the end of job would likely be April of 2020.
1 year from that, from then, yeah.
So what we're doing all this work for is to have an RFP that the town feels good about, that we can then use to get bids.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there.
All right, so, we're close to the end. We have two people. Are you here for a particular item that you'd like us to just take on right away, or?
No, I'm just listening at this point.
Okay.
Since I showed up, I thought I'd stay through the end.
Okay, and you, sir? Are you here for a particular, you're just hanging out? Okay. All right, so let's, Bill, he never left. Okay, so I'm gonna jump to the Housing Authority, filling vacancies. So, as everybody knows, it was just prior to our last meeting that we received the resignations of three of the four. Yeah, four of the five Housing Authority elected officials. So what I mentioned at that time was just that we were going to have the discussion now because it wasn't on the agenda, so we couldn't discuss it. And so I've done a little bit of work. There's still a lot more to do, but we can discuss it now because it is in fact on the agenda. So what you have in the packet is a letter that we received from DHCD about the process for filling the vacancies. So what we can do is we can appoint until the next election 3 members for the Housing Authority. We cannot appoint all 5. The reason is that one is a governor's appointment, so we don't have the authority to fill that role again. And then the other reason, the other position, we never received a resignation for, so we can't refill it. So technically, that person is still in the role. I think we're not sure if he.
We believe that he's
Yeah,
moved
we're
out
not
of
sure.
town.
We're not sure that he still lives in Carlisle, but we haven't gotten the census back saying that he's moved from Carlisle. So legally, Alan. So legally, we can't. We can't. He's still an elected official until we get either he's no longer a resident or we get a resignation from him. So we can't refill that vacancy. But we can fill 3 of the vacancies. And I think that's as far as I'm going to go in talking about that tonight.
I just had one question, though.
Yes.
What triggers the governor?
So that was in the letter here.
90 days.
But I think that what typically happens is that the Housing Authority recommends to the governor somebody be the governor's the governor's appointee.
Okay,
So we need to, so they don't just, pick somebody.
Okay.
The Housing Authority recommends somebody, and then they either approve or deny that. I think they generally approve it.
Yeah, okay.
And if
Oh,
they
there it is,
don't
okay.
approve someone within 90 days, then we appoint somebody. I believe that's.
120 days.
120 days.
Yeah.
That's right, correct.
But this is all just kind of weird because we need to propose somebody in order for them to, but I mean, in here it addresses that in this letter from them.
Okay.
So, but there are legal obligations that the housing authority needs to meet, and so one of the things that I asked town council for, I think we've had them very busy, so they haven't had a chance to reply back yet. But I asked them to tell us what are the alternative ways that we can deal with these legal obligations, given the fact that we don't have a housing authority. And so primarily those legal obligations revolve around the leases. And so, yeah, I think we need to discuss how do we deal with that. There's various options. We can move who owns the leases to another party like the trust that, you know, has everybody. And I don't know what our other options are. Tom has to get back to us on that, but we definitely need to deal with that issue.
What I believe as part of knowing that there were issues that needed to be dealt with and staffing issues surrounding that Tim has taken over, making sure that nothing falls through the cracks relative to the ground leases. So I believe we're covered.
Yeah, I think we're.
Town council and-
Yeah, I think we're.
We went through that exercise.
We're covered to make sure that nothing's going to be missed, but we're not covered from who actually ultimately has responsibility. I think that's really that's what I have so far.
Yeah, so until you hear from town council,
There's not much we can talk
there's
about.
not much we can talk about.
So these have been elected positions, so if we appoint 3 people, come the next election in May, those 3 people could run for the position, or other people could run for the position.
That's correct.
Yep. The town
Yes.
caucus will determine.
Yes, that's correct. When is the town caucus?
It's usually in March.
Okay. Okay. So more to come. Let's put this on the agenda, and it also sounded like we want to put every 2 weeks, or I mean, every 4 weeks from this week, the master planning committee on the agenda. Any questions?
I suppose if anyone is interested in being considered as an appointee, they should make it known to us, I would guess.
Yeah. Yep.
That would be helpful.
Yep. Okay, so let's jump into the town administrator's report, which is the last, no, it's not the last item,
No,
but almost the last.
We, previously the board acted on the 2 proclamations, so the next item is item 2, purchase of a new ambulance. Chief Flannery is recommending that the board enter into a contract to purchase a new ambulance for the sum of $300,000, which was appropriated at town meeting. He's suggesting that we use the joint purchasing contracts with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which essentially means that they have done the bidding, the competitive procurement, and we're essentially buying off of that contract, so we don't have to go out to bid for the ambulance, and it's.
I just find it remarkable
magically
that
the
it's exactly
same-
I was gonna say the same.
$300,000. I mean,
To the
Isn't
penny.
that
To the
neat?
penny.
you know, I mean,
Yes.
that's pretty good
Estimation.
estimating.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Funny how that
How
happened.
how does that happen? I mean, really, honestly,
Did a
how
good
does
deal
that
on our
happen?
trade-in, I guess, maybe. That was the.
Yeah, I had the exact same reaction.
Yeah, it's,
That's with the extra defibrillator.
That's what the- all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
We have
okay.
a
plenty
suggested
of
motion
bells
for your action.
With the, how could it possibly be exactly 300,000 caveat?
To bid.
Somebody want to make a motion?
All right, I move the town enter into a contract with Greenwood Emergency Vehicles LLC to purchase a 2019 Horton F-550 4x4 Type 1/457 ambulance for the sum of $300,000 under the terms and conditions of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council's joint purchasing contract, said sum to be paid only upon delivery and acceptance by the Carlisle Fire Department.
Second?
So just for the record here, what we are, for all the people watching and in the audience, what we are approving here is the actual expenditure of the funds to purchase an ambulance that town meeting has already decided we should purchase. So town meeting said, yes, let's buy this. Yes, it's okay. It's $300,000. And so we are now just spending the funds to purchase, approving the spending of the funds to purchase that ambulance.
What happens to the old ambulance?
They
Trading
traded it in.
Trading it in.
Trading it in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
I did.
There was a second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, and then item 4, the town clerk is seeking your input on the early voting process. Legally, she's obligated to offer early voting from October 22nd through November 2nd, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. She has some suggestions for a few days when she would be open more hours than that, and also to have some dates where the voting would be at the library and instead of town hall to make it more convenient.
And we can do that? We have the flexibility to change those dates and locations?
As long as at a minimum, we have the 9 to 3 from the 22nd through November 2nd. That's what we're obligated to be open for early voting.
And the location doesn't matter?
And as long as it's advertised, that it's an alternative location.
Yeah, I wonder, because we only have one.
She's talking about one evening at the library.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's lovely. It's just that because we only have one, what is it called? Precinct.
Precinct, then.
I don't know if you can change it in the middle.
I can let her know your preferences that voting.
It's not a preference. I'm just wondering if she
it can be done.
can do that.
Okay.
Because of the fact that we only have one precinct. And the precinct is the precinct usually, you know, unless.
It's not a voting place. It's an
Well, it
area
kind
of
of
town.
is,
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if the precinct is a voting place.
She's the expert,
And
so.
she's the expert.
So
but-
we could approve this just pending the question,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we have to,
So
we
you-
want to approve the early voting anyway.
Right.
Because we can't not approve it.
So, so you're good with November 2nd being open 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.? That's really the only change.
That's expanding hours.
Yeah, that's expanded hours for that last final day of early voting.
I'm fine with that. And then I'm fine with the library location, as long
Yeah.
as
Figure
that's
out
okay.
if that can be done.
Yeah.
And which
Okay.
date?
At which date she would, okay, well, that could still be decided at the next
Yeah.
meeting as well.
Do
I mean,
we
why-
care?
Do we care? Yeah, I mean.
I
Oh,
don't
no, I mean, so, well, if it's legally permissible, you're fine with her choosing
Yes.
any one of those dates
Yeah,
at the library? Okay.
as long as the library's okay with it.
Yes.
I think she's, asked them, but yeah.
Okay,
Okay, and I think that's everything I had in my report.
okay. I do want to just, so is the public hearing for the propane tank towards storage tanks already posted?
That's already advertised.
Already advertised.
It could be opened and continued if that meeting doesn't work.
Well, no, I can't be at the October 9th meeting, so I'd like to try, if possible, to keep really meaty things off of there, just from a selfish perspective. The propane tank storage is an immediate thing that, but I will be out of the country on that day for work.
Well, the board could continue it to the next
No.
meeting if you're gonna be back.
I don't mind missing the public hearing for the propane tanks.
Okay.
It's just if we have a choice on if there's other really meaty things that might be on the agenda and they can be put off, I would like to just put them off just so that I'm here. Just
So
being
we
selfish.
talked about doing the housing authority next time, so maybe don't do that
Yeah,
next time?
Yeah.
No, we don't want
Because-
to talk
yeah.
about housing authority next time.
Nathan's not, okay. All right.
And what else of here?
Okay, so what else was on the, do we need that? meeting?
Well, we do because there's a public hearing.
Oh,
Posted
the-
public
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
But it could be a real short meeting. You know, I think the decision was we're not going to continue to talk about the fire chief search process, right?
Right, until we get
Until
some.
now, you get some.
Right, so we're going to skip that. There won't be any update on speed limits. Town meeting will have been a wonderful success.
Will have been,
Um,
yes.
The solar project is the one that we might have to move on, or is that,
Right. Well,
is
you,
that
you,
time,
you
is
wanted,
that time constrained?
you wanted to see the recommendation at the next meeting, so that,
Yeah, is that time
We-
constrained, Bill?
Yes.
Yes and no, I mean, as long as we wait, we may slide into block 4 and lose 4%.
Okay, see, 7, so. If we put it early, I could potentially call in at 1 in the morning.
Are you going to be in Australia?
No, I can't do that, I can't. Master planning would be 2 weeks from now, and we won't do housing. So the pressing things that we have right now is the solar and the, and I can just provide my feedback to
okay.
You'll
Bill
have-
ahead of time, and then.
You'll get your pre-read
Yeah.
materials.
Okay. And then other things that come up that, obviously.
Okay.
Given the community input we've received, do we need to have any discussion about the Deer Committee?
Oh,
Yeah, I think, in that, is that in time? Yes, it
Yeah.
should be, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it now, but I can't.
no, because it wasn't on the
So
agenda.
again, I can give my thoughts in
Would you?
writing.
That'd be great.
And we'll put that on the agenda.
Okay.
Do talk a little bit more about October 2nd, please. Is there a selectmen's meeting at 6:15 at the school?
6:30.
6:30.
So there
Yes.
no longer needs to be. We have nothing.
Scout project.
There's
Oh,
a
yes,
scout
the scout project. So we're having a
Oh.
town meeting for the scout project. So, yes.
No, you're not having a town meeting.
No, we're
Right.
having a meeting before the town
Well, maybe
meeting.
he'd do a presentation. We wouldn't want to do that because the word Highland is involved.
Yeah.
So we will be having a meeting at 6:30 at the school. Actually, 6:15 at the school for the, with the one agenda item of the Boy Scout project, Douglas Stevens's project.
Has a decision been made on Article 3?
We decided tonight that we were not going to move it,
Yes.
correct? We decided tonight we're
Correct.
not gonna
That's
move
what I
it.
heard, right,
And
yes.
I just received a text, which you've probably seen, because I think it's already gone through, but, the school committee decided not, that they don't want us to move either Article 1 or Article 2. So we have no articles to move. But we do have a Boy Scout project to talk about before town meeting,
And master plan to discuss.
and potentially
Possibly.
master plan if
At.
Wayne wants to do that. I mean, we're handing Wayne a mess.
Yeah.
Wayne,
I know.
here's a town meeting with nothing, what do you want to do?
Yes, Nathan, I have a quote from you, we are motionless.
Yes.
another board meeting that I was not going to go to because we were having a special town meeting.
But now-
Which now I will go to.
Is anybody else not gonna be at town meeting?
I'll be there.
Okay, just wanna make sure we have a
Okay.
quorum.
Have a quorum,
Just
yeah,
wanted to
otherwise
be
you
sure.
can't have a
Okay.
selectmen's meeting.
Yeah, I might be able to hit the selectmen's meeting on my way to my other board meeting, but.
So, and we're also warrantless. All right, I think that's liaison
Okay.
reports.
So Doug Stevenson, I have to call. Or,
Yeah.
I have none.
You have none? I have none.
I
We got
have
the-
one, I had the Municipal Facilities Committee. And I think that we selectmen should probably have a meeting still with the school committee around the new facilities manager. They obviously are losing their facilities manager and are gonna be advertising for, I don't know whether they're advertising for part-time or full-time. Do you know?
It's advertised now.
It's advertised for full-time. Ah, okay. So I guess we will not be sharing. What I was hoping was that they would be advertising part-time. We've been advertising for a part-time. We've been having the devil's time getting somebody to answer these ads. So it would have been nice if we could have
Mhm.
put our position together with their position and gone halvesies.
Bill,
or
are you gonna
whatever.
apply?
Be drafted.
I already asked him. He already said no. So we're still looking for a facilities manager. We will start the small jobs though, and we will, I think John Mativier is going to help us out.
He's agreed to
Because
help.
they're little jobs and we'll be compensating for him for the time he spends on that. And that's a major thing. We're looking for storage space for various things at the DPW, but that's to be.
Well, talk to Douglas.
Yes, well, I will.
No activity.
Okay.
Great.
Great. And so we have no minutes and we have no cemetery deeds?
No.
So unless anybody has any last thing that they would like to say from the audience? Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to
I
adjourn?
was gonna say,
Yes.
move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And thank you very much for joining us on TV.